Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to take a look at Twice as Clever by Stronghold Games. This is a 1 to 4 player roll and write game. Let's go ahead down to the table here. I'll give you a general idea how to play the game, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, so we're going to just briefly go over how to play Twice as Clever. There's a lot of rules to this game, but it's very intuitive, so there's not a lot. Once you get it, you're good. So in the game, you're going to get 4 of these markers. You're going to get a nice giant score pad, and it's actually larger. We've actually gone through a lot of it already. And you're going to get this nice tray, which is the inside of the box, and some nice dice. And what you're going to do, basically, we're going to start off by saying you just roll your dice. And you're going to pick one of these numbers, and I'll explain why you would pick different ones over other ones in a second. But when you pick these numbers, anything lower than that number gets put up on this tray. I think I bumped that, but whatever. And I'll explain what happens to that in a second. Now let's go ahead and look at the player sheet. So this is where you're going to score all your points from the game. And it's divided into 5 different sections. Each of these sections are going to mechanically work differently. So in this first section, you're going to use silver dice. And silver dice are really unique in this game. When you pick a silver die, so let's say this was a 6, everything lower than it gets to be used. So everything that would have been returned to the tray, which will be returned to the tray, gets to be marked off on here. Now, the silver 6 die can be on the 6th row any color you want it to be. So you're just going to cross that off. And then these dice have to be the color that they're on. If already checked off, you just simply don't get it. Now, the white die can be anything you want on that color for that number, so any of the ones. That is if you pick the silver die on your turn. If you pick the silver die and it's not your turn, so that gets into what happens on after your turn. After your turns, your opponents, so let's say this guy's up here, your opponents get to pick one of these dice and mark it off on their board. If they pick the silver one, it's simply going to be this plus another 6. So they'll be able to mark off 2 of the 6s. If it was like a 2, it'd be this, any 2 they want to cross off on their board. Now, the point of doing the silver dice is for each that you have crossed off on each of these rows, you're going to score points as indicated down here. So on this first row here, if I have 5 of them checked off, I will go ahead and get 16 points for this row. If I have 2 of them checked off on the next one, I'll get 4, and so on. Also, if you finish a column, you're going to get these bonuses on the top. And each of these bonuses do different things, but I'm going to explain about the unique ones. Now, the unique ones are going to be this +1, this one here that lets you return dice from the tray, and this reroll. So this +1, you're going to circle it off when you get it, and then you can cross it off when you use it. It's the same with these ones. You're circling them when you have the ability to, when you pick it up, and you cross it off when you use it. So you're going to get these from 2 different ways. You're going to get them from the turn track, which every time you're going to roll, you're going to cross off one of these until you get to the player count that you were at, and then the game ends when everybody's got to that player count. And then you can also get them by doing these completing different rows and columns in these different places. So this one you're going to get if you finish up a column. This one's going to be if you finish up a row or a column. It's going to be whatever's located here. This one is if you get to the location that states those. So you actually can place something in those. And same with here and here. Now, the other things that are on here is you can get these really cool foxes. If you get these foxes, basically what they're going to do is whichever of these sections you have the lowest score in is going to be what each of the foxes is worth. So that's basically foxes. You can also get these things by getting all of the rerolls, all of these returning dice from your tray, and all these +1s. Now the rerolls are simple to understand and the +1s are simple to understand. What the return the dice from the tray are is, let's say I have 2 of these on here and I only have this blue one, but I don't want any blue. I can cross off one of those return die from a tray and return 1 dice from the tray. I can do that as many times as I'm able to, and then I'll get to roll those from my 3rd roll or 2nd roll or whatever. So that's how those function. That's really nice addition beyond That's Pretty Clever. That's Pretty Clever didn't have that in it. So that was basically the silver. That's how you score on the silver. Next you have the yellow. The yellow is unique because you're going to circle these different places when you roll or use a die or add on to equal the number for yellow. So for yellow, you can use either the white die or the yellow die. Let's go over the white die real quick. The white die is a wild die, so it can be used anywhere. The unique thing about the white die is, though, when it's used in the blue area, it's this die plus whatever the blue die is for the value that goes here. And I'll explain blue a little bit more when we get to it, but that's the white die. So if you roll a white or a yellow, you can circle one of these. If the thing that you picked is already circled, you're going to cross it off. That's when you score points, or that's how you're going to score points at the end of the game for these different spaces. When you circle them, if you have all of them circled in a row or column, you're going to get the bonuses that are here. You don't get the bonuses for crossing them off, only circling them. So that's yellow. Blue is unique where you're going to take the value, if you pick either the blue or the white, you're going to take the value of the combined total of them and mark it down here. The unique thing about blue column is the next one you write down has to be equal to or less than the previous one. So you have to be careful and make sure you don't go down to a really small number towards the beginning of the game, or you're going to have a hard time being able to get these spaces. That's basically blue. And whenever you get to any of these spaces that have those symbols on them, you're going to get to do them. Now, I explained the other special ones, but these ones are simply like, if you get the yellow, you can just circle or cross off any of the ones that have a circle on the yellow. If you get the pink, you can put any number you want on the pink. If you get the silver, you can cross off any 2 of the same number on here. The blue, you can put whatever number you want on here, as long as it's less than or equal to the number that's previous to it. So that's basically how those ones work. So there's 2 more lines on here. And the 2 more lines are going to be the green one. The green one's pretty neat, where when you pick your number for the green, you're going to multiply it by the value listed in the space. And when you have a pair of them, you're going to subtract the right number from the left number and get your total. So with the greens, you can actually have negative values up here. And whatever these values are at the end of the game is your score. But some of these are really cool, like this one's ×4, and then this was ×1. So you can get a pretty high number up on here. Plus you also have the unlocks on the bottom. Now, the pink one is completely straightforward. The pink one, you just put whatever die you want on here of pink. And whatever the totals of this are is your score. Now, the caveat is if you place numbers where it says equal to or greater than, you can place whatever you want, but if it's not equal to or greater than, you don't get the bonus on the bottom. So you want to try to be able to get those. That is, in a nutshell, how you play Twice as Clever. There's a little bit more to it, but that's the general idea. You're going to go through until you hit your player count. So it's a 4-player game, so if it's 4 players, you can get to here. If you're playing 3 players, you get to here. If you're playing 2 or 1, you'll get to here. So that's it. That's basically how you play it. Let's go head back up to the table here, and I'll give you my final thoughts on Twice as Clever. All right, Twice as Clever is amazing. I love this game, and That's Pretty Clever. They're both amazing roll and write games. I like how the modern roll and writes give the leftover dice as something that the other players can pick. It adds interaction to the game. It's a really good mechanic, and I like how it's done here. I like all the decisions that you have to make on the different places of the board. Your decisions directly impact your score. No matter what you roll, for the most part, the decisions that you make are more impactful than the dice that are necessarily rolled. So there is always going to be some issue. If you can have bad rolls based on previous decisions that you've made throughout the game. But I like the fact that both of these roll and writes do let you sort of mitigate that a little bit by either adding +1s to the dice, by where you select to focus on the different sections of the game. There is a lot to these roll and writes. And there's a lot to the replayability of these roll and writes, because figuring out the puzzle that is these roll and writes is very difficult. So, or at least it is for me. So I've played through the entire score sheet of That's Pretty Clever, and we are working through the score sheet of Twice as Clever, to the point where I laminated the last couple of the first one, and I'm going to laminate the last couple of this one. So this is going to get a lot of play for me. Both of these games are by far, currently, my 2 favorite roll and writes ever made. For me, I would suggest that if you're looking for a roll and write game to play, that these 2 games, Twice as Clever and That's Pretty Clever, are ones that you want to start with. Now, these games are functionally the same idea, so you don't need to have That's Pretty Clever to get Twice as Clever. You can just get Twice as Clever and play. Twice as Clever has extra mechanics that I really like in this one. That's Pretty Clever doesn't have the ability for you to take dice back from the tray on your rolls. That's really cool in this. I like that a lot. There's a lot of times where you do want those higher number dice, but you can't really get to them in That's Pretty Clever, because you need to make sure you at least get 3 placements on your turn. But this game actually has the ability to say, hey, I have a lot of those places where I can return the dice, so I will take that 6, and then I'll pick a couple dice to return to roll. So that's really cool. I also like that this one's a little bit more of a combo-y game than the first one. There's a lot more, especially with the yellow spaces, where you can really quickly, with the yellow spaces, gain different bonuses, and you can do a little bit more chaining with this game. However, I will say, this game is just as difficult as the first one to get higher scores. But chaining those and doing a whole bunch of really cool things feels really good in this game. They really did an excellent job at balancing this game to feel, scoring wise, like the first, but still have a really fun time with having more chances to chain different combos in this game. So I do highly recommend Twice as Clever. It's a wonderful roll and write. If you're looking for a roll and write, this is probably the one I would start with. So that's my thoughts on it. Thank you for watching.